This will be for the con exercise, arithmetic series. So the definition of an arithmetic series, it's when you add or subtract the same amount to the previous term. Okay, I guess I should say each time. And the reason I have subtract in parentheses, when you add a negative number, of course, that's the same as subtracting. And if you want to find the sum of that series, you just take the average of that series and multiply it by the number of terms. So basically, in order to find the average, you just take the first term and add it to the last term, and then divide by 2. And then, of course, you'll multiply that times the number of terms, which is usually designated with the letter n. So, for example, let's say you wanted to add the numbers 1 through 10. Okay, it would be pretty tedious to add each number. So what you can do for the sum is find the average and then multiply that times n, the number of terms. Okay, so the average of this series would be the first term, which is 1, plus the last term, which is 10, divided by 2, and then times n, the number of terms. In this case, there's 10. So we have 11 divided by 2 times 10. Okay, 10 divided by 2 is just 5, and 11 times 5 is 55. All right, if you wanted decimals, 11 over 2 is just 5.5, and that's times 10, the number of terms. So pretty simple formula for the sum of an arithmetic series. All right, first problem, they want us to find the sum. And you need to be familiar with sigma notation before doing this exercise. So there's an exercise before this about sigma notation. Anyhow, we said the sum is the average times the number of terms. All right, so we need the first and last term. So for the first term, you plug in k equals 1 right there. It's going to be 5 times 1 minus 87. And that's just negative 82. And for the last term, you're plugging in 40 in place of k. So it's going to be 5 times 40 minus 87. Okay, and that is 200 minus 87, that's 113. All right, so we just find the average of these two numbers, the first and last term. So it's going to be negative 82 plus 113 divided by 2. And that's multiplied by the number of terms. Okay, so the first one was k equals 1. The last one was k equals 40. And it increments or goes up by 1 each time. So 1 through 40, there's just 40 terms. And now just use the calculator. Okay, right here I get 15.5, and that's times 40. And that gives us 620. So right there is the sum right in the box. All right, the arithmetic sequence is defined as follows. Find the sum of the first 26 terms in the sequence. All right, so they give us A1, and that is the first term. And right here, this is AI, and this is AI minus 1, and then minus 3. All they are saying is you subtract 3 from the previous term to get the new term. In other words, let's say AI was A2. And here we have AI minus 1. Well, if I is 2, then I minus 1 is 1, and that's minus 3. So in other words, to get the next term, you take the previous term and subtract 3. In other words, you're subtracting 3 each time. So the series would start with a 49. That's the first term, and then you're subtracting 3 each time. So 49, 46, 43, and it keeps going. All right. Now 49 is the first term, 46 is the second term, and 43 is the third term. All right. So we said we're doing minus 3 each time. Okay. Now notice, to get from the first term to the third term, we have to subtract 3 2 times. All right, so to get to the third term, you subtract 3 2 times. To get to the 26th term, because they're asking us for the first 26 terms, you have to subtract 3 25 times. All right, just like we did here. To get to the third term, you subtract 3 twice. So however many times you subtract 3, you add 1 to that number, and that's the number term that you're on. So if you subtract 3 25 times, that will give you the 26th term. So we start with 49. And I'm going to find the last term here. We start with 49, and you subtract 3 25 times, so it's minus 3 times 25. And that's 49 minus 75, and that equals negative 26. Okay, now we're in business. We have the first and last terms. So we said the sum equals the average times the number of terms. Okay, the average is going to be the first plus the last divided by 2. So 49 plus negative 26. And that's divided by 2. That's going to be the average. And that whole thing is times the number of terms. They said 26 terms. So I'll do this on the calculator. And I get 299. You just enter that in the box. Okay, we have a series, and they want us to find the sum. So we have the first term, and we have the last term, but we don't know how many terms are in the series. So that's what we have to figure out. Well, how do we get from negative 110 to negative 102? Well, of course, in order to do that, you would have to add 8. Okay, and let's make sure, how do we get from negative 102 to negative 94? Well, once again, you would add 8. Okay, so we are adding the same number each time. So we want to find out how many times we have to add 8 to get from negative 110 to 74. Well, let's see. How much do we have to add to go from negative 110 to 74? Well, if we did 74 minus negative 110, that is 2 negatives in a row, so it's positive. That is 184. All right. So to go from negative 110 all the way to 74, we have to add 184. So how many times did we add 8 in order to add 184? Well, let's see. If we did 184 divided by 8, 8 into 18, 8 into 16 goes twice, carry the 2, 8 into 24 goes 3 times. So what we did was we added 8 23 times. Okay? Remember we said before, however many times you add the same number, you add 1 to that to see how many terms you get. All right, we started with term number 1. When we added it once, we were on term number 2. When we added 8 twice, we were on term number 3. So if we add 8 23 times, this term is number 24. All right. So in other words, there are 24 terms in this series because we had to add 8 24 times, but that is just the number of jumps, the number of times we added 8. So you add 1 to that to find the number of terms, and n is 24. All right, and now we're in business. Now it's very easy. We said the sum is going to be the average times the number of terms. All right, the average is the first, which is negative 110, plus the last, which is 74. And that's divided by 2, times the number of terms, which we said was 24. And we just use the calculator. And I get negative 432. Right in the box.